For 73 years, Eleanor Whitmore lived in the small seaside town of Ashbourne Cove, tucked away in a grand Victorian mansion that sat atop the cliffs, looking out over the restless sea. Everyone in town knew of her, few knew her well. She was the woman who owned half the town, the widow of Charles Whitmore, a shipping magnate who had made his fortune before the internet ever existed. She was the lady with the lace curtains, the roses, and the little white dog that barked at the mailman every morning. And she was lonely. Everyone knew that too. When the news broke that she had passed away quietly in her sleep, the town collectively gasped, not so much from grief, but from curiosity. Eleanor Whitmore was rich beyond imagination, and she had no children. No close family, no apparent heir. And that, everyone agreed, was going to make the will reading very interesting indeed. Chapter 1. The town holds its breath. By the following Monday, the Whitmore mansion's heavy iron gates were opened for the first time in years. A line of cars crawled up the long gravel drive, black sedans, polished SUVs, and even the mayor's old Mercedes. Inside the grand drawing room, sunlight streamed through the tall arched windows. Dust motes floated in the air, dancing in the golden light like tiny spirits. At the center of it all sat Mr. Lawrence Hargreaves, Eleanor's lawyer for nearly 4 decades. He was tall, precise, and carried an air of authority. On the table in front of him lay a single leather-bound folder, the will. Around him, people gathered, murmuring quietly. There was Clara Benson, Eleanor's niece by marriage, who had not spoken to her aunt in over 15 years but had posted a heartfelt tribute on Facebook that morning. George Whitmore, a distant cousin who'd once borrowed money from Eleanor and never repaid it. Reverend Malcolm, the local pastor who had visited Eleanor once a month but mostly to ask for donations for the church roof. Sophie Lang, Eleanor's live-in nurse for the last 7 years, a quiet, kind woman who seemed more heartbroken than anyone else in the room. Tommy Harris, the gardener's son, now 24, who had helped Eleanor with groceries and errands in her later years. The air buzzed with speculation. I heard she left everything to charity, whispered Clara. Rubbish, George muttered. That woman didn't give away a penny she didn't have to. Sophie sat silently, clutching her small handbag, eyes lowered. Mr. Hargreaves cleared his throat. The room fell silent. Chapter 2. The reading begins. This is the last will and testament of Eleanor Margaret Whitmore, he began, his voice even and deliberate. Executed on the 12th of March, this year. He adjusted his spectacles. Before I begin, Mrs. Whitmore asked that I read a short letter she left to accompany her will. He unfolded a single handwritten page, her elegant cursive looping across the creamy paper. Greater than, to those gathered here today. If you are listening to this, it means I have finally taken my leave of this world, and of Ashbourne Cove. I hope the sea was kind to me in my final days, as it always has been. I know many of you have come expecting wealth. Some may deserve it, some certainly do not, but I have spent my life learning that money does not measure love, nor does family always mean kindness. What follows is not about fortune, it is about truth. Eleanor M. Whitmore. The room shifted. Clara's painted smile faltered slightly. Mr. Hargreaves folded the letter neatly and set it aside. Now, he continued, to the will itself. Chapter 3. The bequests. He began with small bequests, carefully chosen, specific, deliberate. Greater than, to Reverend Malcolm, I leave a sum of £10,000 for the upkeep of the church roof. With the strict condition that it not be used for carpeting or statues. The Reverend blushed, murmuring thanks. Greater than, to Clara Benson, my niece, I leave the portrait of my late husband, Charles, currently hanging in the main hall. I hope it reminds you of the value of keeping your promises. Clara frowned. Everyone knew she'd borrowed money from Eleanor to start a business that had failed spectacularly. Greater than, to my cousin George Whitmore, I leave my grandfather's pocket watch. It stopped working long ago, just as he once told me your sense of gratitude did. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter passed through the room. George turned red. Then, something unexpected. Greater than, to Sophie Lang, who has been my nurse, my confidant, and my only real friend in these last years, I leave the sum of £100,000, and the right to remain in the Whitmore mansion for 1 full year following my death, with all expenses paid. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. She hadn't expected anything. Mr. Hargreaves paused before continuing. His gaze lingered on Tommy Harris, sitting quietly at the back of the room. Greater than, to Thomas Harris, son of Michael Harris, my gardener and dear friend, I leave the deed to the Whitmore mansion, its surrounding gardens, and all possessions contained within." The room erupted. "What?" Clara gasped. "You can't be serious. That's absurd," George shouted, standing up. "She's giving the mansion to the gardener's boy." Tommy looked stunned. His hands trembled. There must be some mistake," he whispered. "Mr. Hargreaves raised a hand. "There is no mistake, Mrs. Whitmore made her intentions very clear." He turned another page. "Greater than, to those who would question my choice, I offer this explanation. When I fell in the garden 3 winters ago, it was Tommy who found me. While my own blood ignored my letters, he brought me soup and fixed the old radio. He talked to me about books, about life, about dreams I thought I was too old to have. He reminded me what kindness feels like. I built a house with wealth, but Tommy filled it with warmth. That is why he shall have it." Silence filled the room. Even the ticking of the grandfather clock seemed to stop. Chapter 4. The Fallout. Outside, after the reading, chaos erupted. Clara and George cornered Mr. Hargreaves near his car. "She wasn't in her right mind," Clara snapped. "You'll see, we'll contest it." "You're welcome to try," the lawyer said coolly. "But I assure you, she was perfectly lucid when she signed it. There's a video recording, if you'd like to see her explain it herself." George sputtered. "This is ridiculous, leaving everything to some gardener's kid." "He's not just a gardener's kid," Sophie said quietly. She had followed them outside, her eyes fierce for once. He was the only one who cared about her. Tommy stood apart, staring at the mansion's stone facade. He didn't want it, not really. It felt too big, too full of ghosts. But as the wind blew off the sea, he thought of Eleanor sitting by the fire, sipping tea, telling him stories about her childhood, the one where she'd run away from her governess and hidden in the stables, or the one about the summer she met Charles. She'd told him once, "You know, Tommy, people remember you not for what you leave behind, but for what you gave while you were here." He hadn't understood then. He did now. Chapter 5. The Secret Within. 2 weeks later, Tommy received a sealed envelope from Mr. Hargreaves. Inside was a handwritten note and a small brass key. "Greater than, dear Tommy. If you're reading this, then my house, and its secrets, belong to you now. There is one more thing I wish for you to find. Go to the attic. Behind the old trunk with the lace blankets, you'll find a small chest. Use this key, Eleanor." That evening, Tommy climbed the creaking attic stairs. Dust hung thick in the air. He found the chest where she'd said it would be. Inside was a stack of yellowed letters, tied with a blue ribbon, and a small photograph. The photo showed a young Eleanor holding a baby. On the back, in faded ink, were the words, "Greater than, for my son, born 1954. Taken from me, but never forgotten." Tommy frowned. A son. Eleanor had always said she had no children. He opened the letters. They were addressed to Daniel. The handwriting trembled as the years went on. "Greater than, my dearest boy. They told me I couldn't keep you. I was only 19. Your father insisted it would ruin us. But I have loved you every day since. I have searched, but never found where they sent you. If somehow you ever come to Ashbourne Cove, I hope you'll forgive me." Tommy's heart sank. He turned the last page, and froze. There was a hospital adoption record attached. The child's adoptive name, Michael Harris. His father. Chapter 6. Blood and Kindness. Tommy sat there for a long time, the sea wind whistling through the attic eaves. Eleanor wasn't just a kind old woman who had taken a liking to him. She was his grandmother. He thought of the afternoons they'd spent together, the way she'd look at him sometimes as if seeing something familiar in his face. He thought of her laughter, the softness in her eyes when he reminded her of someone she once knew. She had known. Of course she had. She had found him again, through kindness, through chance, through the simplest acts of humanity. And now, through her will, she had given him back more than a mansion. She had given him a history, a family, a legacy of love instead of loneliness. Chapter 7. The Legacy. In the months that followed, Tommy honored her memory in quiet ways. He kept the mansion, but he opened its gardens to the public, calling it the Whitmore Sanctuary. He turned one wing into a community library and another into a shelter for women escaping hardship, something Eleanor herself had always dreamed of but never dared to do. Sophie stayed on as the manager, smiling more than she used to. And every Sunday, Tommy placed fresh flowers by Eleanor's portrait in the main hall. Not because she had left him her fortune, but because, in her own way, she had found him when neither of them knew they were family. One spring morning, as visitors strolled through the gardens, a little girl tugged her mother's hand and pointed toward the statue near the fountain, Eleanor's likeness, gazing out toward the sea. "Who's that lady, Mama?" The mother smiled. "That's Mrs. Whitmore, dear. She helped make this place for everyone." The child tilted her head. Was she rich? The mother looked at the sea, at the flowers, at the laughter echoing through the gardens. "She was," she said softly. "But not the way people think.